So that is really where we start to see a connection between Light and Ryuk, because they're both in situations where they're incredibly bored, very dissatisfied. They don't like the state of the worlds that they're living in. So we're starting to see them kind of mirror each other. Hi everyone, Starlight here, and welcome to another video. Welcome back to my channel, and welcome to the very first video in my Death Note series. So Death Note came out in 2006, and it continues to top the popularity charts even today. And it's always a really good starter recommendation for anyone who's looking to kind of dip their toes into anime. I know we all have that one friend who's always like, hey, I want to get into anime. What do I watch? What do you recommend? And I know a lot of people say Death Note. Death Note is a genius blend of mainstream appeal, but it's also got really exciting and well-paced storytelling and characters that you can really get behind. It's got those really mysterious and ominous undertones that make it so exciting and worthy of binge watching. And it's something that you can really sink your teeth into. Besides amazing pacing and interesting visuals, Death Note is an anime that captivates you right out of the gate, starting with episode 1. And episode 1 does a really good job of drawing you in from the very beginning. So the episode opens up with a glimpse into the Shinigami realm. It's a desolate wasteland, it's gray, it's bleak, and it's accompanied by this very somber and emotionally provocative music that really sets the mood for the Shinigami realm. And here's where we're introduced to two very bored and very dissatisfied individuals. First, we're introduced to Ryuk, the Shinigami, which is a god of death. Ryuk looks out amongst his disgruntled peers who are all sitting around because they have absolutely nothing to do. And Ryuk is obviously jaded, and he's tired of this monotonous existence and a seemingly pointless one. At this point, he decides to get up and go to the human world to retrieve a Death Note that he dropped, and he wants to go locate it. There are heavy implications that Ryuk did this on purpose, just to kind of make things interesting and shake things up, because we do know that Ryuk is very bored and he's looking to ease his boredom. Idle hands, right? Then we're introduced to Light Yagami, who is a very successful, very intelligent student, popular and successful, but unchallenged. And as a result is restless and distracted, and he's also dissatisfied with the state of the world that he lives in. A lot of the times we see Light really preoccupied in his own world with his own thoughts. Here we can clearly see a connection between Ryuk and Light and how they mirror each other's mindsets. We get a glimpse for the setup into Light's character as we see the way that he not only looks at but interacts with the people around him. For example, we see a lot of instances where Light has his hand under his chin, he's looking very detached, very disinterested, he'll kind of look, through the corner of his eyes at his peers, and we can see that he is greatly detached from his surroundings and also greatly dissatisfied with how things are going. Light is constantly bombarded with endless reports of violent crime on the news every day, as we see that scene where he's walking home from school and there's this huge jumbo screen and it's been broadcasting to the general public a lot of murders that have been happening. There's a part where the murders are being broadcasted and then Light is kind of really glazed over, like we see that look in his eyes and it's just like he's not there. So we can kind of see how fed up he really is with the current living situation. And at this point, we start to see that Light's worldview and his points are really starting to be bolstered here, because what he's seeing is that over time, society has been so desensitized that there's an overall degradation of the society that he's living in, because there's so much crime, there's so many things going on. People are, we're hearing stories of a series of murders, we're hearing this, we're hearing that, and Light at this point is just so fed up that his worldview is that this world is just no good. And then what I found really interesting is that we see a simultaneous shot of Ryuk, who's in the Shinigami realm. So there's this side-by-side moment where Light in the human world and Ryuk in the Shinigami realm, there's this side-by-side split. And they both have the same thought and they share this one sentence. They say, this world is rotting. That is really where we start to see a connection between Light and Ryuk, because they're both in situations where they're incredibly bored, very dissatisfied. They don't like the state of the worlds that they're living in. So we're starting to see them kind of mirror each other. So I thought right off the bat, episode 1, I started to put those connections together. One day before Light leaves school, he notices Ryuk's death note. So he goes up to the death note. He has a moment of hesitation because in all reality, he thinks it's a prank. And he doesn't want to look silly picking up a notebook of death. You know, he probably thinks that it's some sick prank, because at one point he even says, you know, it's well thought out, or this is really extensive for a prank. I'll give them that, whoever put this together. But we can see that Light is really hesitant because he's like, is this real? Is this not real? I'm not sure. So Light takes the book home and he decides to do a little bit of a test run. He goes home and he sees that there's this news broadcast of this guy who's holding teachers and students hostage at his school. So he tests the death note and, of course, it works. So in order to really confirm his suspicions of the notebook's validity, he goes ahead and he tests it again later in the episode, but on some biker gang guys who are really making trouble for this very innocent lady. And of course, the death note works again. And he, in his mind, now realizes that, okay, what I have is the real deal. Later that night, Ryuk appears in Light's bedroom and he scares the living daylights out of Light, which is funny because, again, we see them build up this relationship throughout the episode, but when you are just meeting a Shinigami for the first time, that is probably a really overwhelming experience, because what I have noticed with all of the Shinigami throughout the series, they're tall, they're huge, and then we're not even getting into their wingspans, which is probably like really, really large, you know? And I'm looking at a lot of instances where we see humans and they're standing next to Shinigami. For example, Rem, Ryuk, Sito, and we're seeing so many Shinigami when they're standing next to humans, and they dwarf them because they're so much taller. So imagine not knowing anything about these creatures and their existence, and then out of nowhere you just hear from the corner of your dark bedroom, you've taken quite a liking to it. And you turn around and you see Ryuk. You'd be so shocked, and again, just like Light, he fell out of his chair. That's probably what I would do as well. So it's at this point where Ryuk and Light enter into a conversation about the Death Note. Ryuk fills him in about the Death Note, the rules, why he dropped it, and he mentions one little thing. Any human that's used the Death Note can either go to heaven or hell for all eternity. That's all. That's all. So the episode concludes with Light telling Ryuk of his plans for the Death Note and how he intends to use it to create a new world with no suffering, no bad people, and no crime, and how he intends to clean up the world one name at a time and become the god of the new world. Okay guys, so that brings me to the end of the episode synopsis. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get into some really interesting discussion topics. So again, you guys definitely tune in. I would love to hear what you guys think. So let's get into some discussion questions. The first discussion question that I have was, what do you guys think about Light's willingness to not only pick up the Death Note so readily, but to have used it as extensively as he did in such a short space of time? Because remember, even Ryuk had made a comment about it. He said, look how many names you've written. As though, as a Shinigami, he was surprised. He's like, a human has never written so many names in the book before. So Light is out here breaking records, and it's really, really astounding. Ryuk is at this point just expressing his surprise at Light pretty much filling up the page, I mean back to front, right? With like 3, 4, maybe 5 pages of names. So what do you guys think about his readiness to use it? What do you think about Ryuk? Was he impressed? Was he surprised? Was he just passing a comment? What do you guys think about that? The next thing that I've always wanted to talk about, something that kills me to this day, is when Ryuk comes and he just so casually mentions that any human that uses a Death Note can neither go to heaven or hell for all eternity. I think that that should not be a footnote. I think that should either be as soon as you open the Death Note, it should literally either be the very first rule, or there should be a warning that says, hey, you can pick it up, you can touch it. But if you write a name in it and you actually kill someone, you can't go to heaven or hell. And then give people an option to kind of say, okay, you know what, now that I know this, I probably don't want to use this book because I feel like that's something that's very important to know about ahead of time. And the way Ryuk just kind of shows up and says it so casually, and I'm just there, like, I remember the first time watching this, I really thought to myself, I looked at that moment and I said, that's something that maybe you should let people know right off the bat. So what do you guys think about that rule that a human that's used the Death Note can either go to heaven or hell for all eternity? Or do you think that is something that's kind of important and should either be placed somewhere at the front of the book or let people know ahead of time before they decide to use it? Because I'm quite sure Light didn't know that before he used it, but I mean, question is, did he care? You know. And my last discussion topic for today is, what do you guys think about Light thinking that he was inherently special and chosen to use the Death Note? Because at one point he says to Ryuk, why was I chosen? Why me? And Ryuk literally looks at him and says, what, you think you're so special or you're so smart or something? I just so happened to drop it and you just so happened to pick it up. Again, there's probably some kind of superiority complex with Light because we see throughout the episode he probably has himself on a pedestal because he is, in some regards, very much superior to the people around him, intelligence-wise, looks-wise, different things like that. And maybe there's some part of him that feels that he could be a god of a new world and that in some weird way, shape, or form that he was chosen specifically for this task. So do you guys feel like his inherent superiority complex, or the fact that he is pretty much smarter than than a lot of people, maybe all people around him, do you think that played into a little bit of his god status, thinking that he could be the god of the new world, thinking that he was the only one capable of taking on the task? What do you guys think about what played into that role as to why he thought he was specifically hand chosen for the Death Note? Well guys, that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed today's video, go ahead and show that like button some love. Leave a comment in the comment section below because I would love to hear what you guys think. Join the conversation. Let me know, what did you think when you first watched Death Note? What are your thoughts and opinions on episode 1? And what do you think about my discussion questions? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Maybe you spotted something that I missed? Definitely leave it in the comment section and join the conversation. And as always, consider subscribing to my channel because I would definitely appreciate that. So you guys, until next time, I will see you in another video. Bye!